This painting, Qingming Festival along the river, vividly records the prosperity of northern Sung. Sung's territory was not as vast as that of the Han or Tang dynasties, nor was its army as powerful. But its urban civilization reached a level never seen before in the history of China. The painting depicts the Sung capital, Bianyang, with people going hither and thither, swarms of merchants engaged in trade, opera singers, and chanting poets. The 20th century historian Chen Yin-che thought so highly of Sung civilization that he argued Chinese culture evolved over thousands of years to create the world of the great Sung dynasty. It was just at this time, however, that the 6th Sung emperor, Shenzong, launched a set of vigorous reforms recommended by his chancellor, Wang. Why were these reforms necessary when the Sung Empire was flourishing? What lay behind them? Why did the emperor support Wang Anshe's proposals despite strong resistance at court? Why did Wang Anshe and his close friend Sima Guang fall out over the measures dubbed the New Policies? Opinion has been divided over Wang and his reforms ever since he introduced them. When northern Sung eventually collapsed, were he and his reforms to blame? Chunqiao Post House may be the most famous inn in all of China. It is where Zhao Kuangyin donned a yellow robe to become the first emperor of the Sung dynasty. During the previous dynasty, the later Zhou, he had commanded the imperial guard. After seizing the throne in a coup, he was concerned that his own generals might do the same to him. His solution was to sideline the military and promote scholarship. The Sung court adopted a broad-based system of imperial examinations to recruit scholar officials. But Emperor Taizu's policy had significant drawbacks. The number of officials increased tenfold compared to the Tang era, leading to ever greater complexity in government, as well as a host of idle bureaucrats. As Sung historian Ye Shi lamented, since ancient times, China has never had so many officials. Apart from useless officials, there were also useless soldiers. Having sidelined the professional soldiers, the Sung rulers had to rely on recruiting masses of transient drifters whenever there was a local upheaval. The idea was that every new recruit would mean one less lawless drifter. By the mid-northern Sung era, as the political analyst Cai Xiang pointed out, the Sung were exhausting most of their resources just in maintaining the army. In 1067, the newly enthroned Shenzong realized that the cost of the army was draining the country. The cost of paying the host of officials was also putting the finances in the red. Too many officials, too many soldiers, and too many expenses. Behind the cultural peak, this was the true face of a fragile empire. As Ye Shi put it, despite its million-strong army, the Sung would inevitably be reduced to a weak nation. It was constantly harassed, not only by the Khitans and Western Xia in the north and northwest, but even by the Zhaozhe, who repeatedly challenged Sung on what is now China's border with Vietnam. All this was a long way from Emperor Shunzong's aspirations. The emperor, aged just 20, did not understand why the great Sung Empire was so weak. Why was he not a paramount ruler like Emperor Wu of Han or Emperor Taizong of Sima Guang. Named after Guang Prefecture in Henan Province, where he was born in 1019, Sima Guang was a famous historian, statesman and writer. Known for being upright and outspoken, Sima Guang was highly regarded for his moral principles and great learning. But Shunzong was disappointed when Sima Guang only advised him to look to his spiritual development and try to be benevolent, wise and brave. Good advice, but not practical policy. The pragmatic Shunzong thought it abstract and irrelevant.
司马光当时给宋神宗提了6条建议。从修身的角度来说，就是仁爱、明辨是非、处事果断。总结下的话就是仁、明、武。从治国理政来说，他也给宋仁宗提了3条建议，就是任官、欣赏和必罚。
其实这6条建议，司马光在此之前给宋神宗的爷爷和爸爸都曾经说过，所以宋神宗听了司马光的回答，那么一下就明白这一些不能解决实际问题。
To seek advice on defending the border, Shunzong turned to his minister Fu Bi, who had been responsible for Emperor Renzong's political reforms. But Fu Bi only dampened Shunzong's enthusiasm, saying that the new emperor's best policy was to practice benevolence and avoid war for 20 years. Now an old man and set in his ways, Fu Bi was no longer the courageous reformer who had served Emperor Renzong.
其实宋神宗对富弼是寄予很大的希望的，毕竟他以前参加过由范仲淹主持的清理信征。听完了富弼说的话以后史书上记载神宗是良久不语。
Disappointed with the elderly and conservative ministers around him, Shunzong was desperate to find a solution to the thorny 100-year-old problem he faced. Suddenly, he remembered Han Wei, who had been his confidential secretary before he ascended the throne.
韩伟是谁呀？是以前宋神宗做太子的时候，他身边的一个记事参军。韩伟跟宋神宗的关系非常好，经常陪他读读书讨论讨论问题什么的。韩伟这个人很有本事，谈事都谈得头头是道，说的宋神宗连连称是，觉得这个人真有学问。
但韩伟总是跟神宗说，这都不是我说的，都不是我的思想，这是我的好朋友王安石的说的。
Because Han Wei often mentioned Wang Anshi and his ideas of reform, the young emperor developed great respect for Wang, who was already a famous scholar. He finally fixed his attention on him. It seemed that Wang was just what he had been looking for, an advisor sent by heaven. Wang Anshi, whose courtesy name was Jiafu, came from Fuzhou in Jiangxi province. He was a statesman, philosopher, reformer, and poet. As early as Emperor Renzong's reign, Wang Anshi had written a lengthy treatise entitled A Memorial Presented to Emperor Renzong. It summed up his years of experience as a local official, pointing out the dire state of national affairs and offering a systematic plan of reform. But the national policy at the time was still constraining the military and promoting culture, and Emperor Renzong was busy selecting a crown prince. So Wang Anshi's treatise attracted little attention. With no response from the emperor, Wang Anshi realized the time was not yet ripe. The Song rulers were not ready to implement reforms.
王安石是一个性格很固执的人，他有一个外号叫傲相公。他觉得皇上不欣赏他的变法理念，他也根本无意去当什么大官。所以当时王安石是一次次谢绝了朝廷对他的任命。
甚至有一次官府派人把委任状送到门上去，王安石照例不接受，送委任状的人只好跪下来求他。王安石则躲到厕所里去了。送委任状的人见此，便把委任状放在桌上，自己走了。可是没想到王安石给追了上去，把委任状给退回去了。
Although his reform proposals had won no support, Wang Anshi did not give up. He was hoping that the new emperor would listen to him and authorize the implementation of his reforms throughout the Sung Empire. When he repeatedly rejected promotion, Wang Anshi's reputation continued to rise. His evasive behavior made Emperor Shenzong and all the court officials even more eager to meet him. In order to make sure that Wang Anshi really had the ability to govern, Shenzong appointed him magistrate of Jiangning Prefecture, modern Nanjing. Then, in the autumn of 1067, he appointed Wang as a scholar of the Imperial Academy.
Wang Anshi 听了宋神宗的任命，马上给宋仁宗写了个谢表，一个推辞字也没有。为什么呢？因为当时翰林学士这个位置太重要了，所有有关国家最重大的、最重要的命令和诏书，都是由翰林学士来起草。在唐朝的时候，翰林学士有一个外号叫内相，也就是皇宫里头的嘴香。
In 1068, Wang Anshi accepted his new appointment and travelled north to the capital, Kaifeng. He believed this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. His poem, Leaving Jinling, reflects his elation. Floating clouds glide cheerfully past the city walls. Flying birds chirp after me with a beautiful song. Now aged 46, he was experienced and determined. With the emperor's support, he would realize his ambitions. At their first meeting, Emperor Shenzong came straight to the point. What is our first priority in governing the country? Wang Anshi replied, choosing a model. Shenzong asked, what about Emperor Taizong's model from the Qing Dynasty? Wang Anshi answered, Your Majesty should follow the model of the ancient sages, Emperors Yao and Shun. Their method was simple, clear, and easy to follow. Scholars throughout history found it perplexing only because they did not understand it. From this conversation, it seems clear that Emperor Shensung was keen, while Wang Anshe was confident. Wang Anshe believed that the difficulties of the Sung Empire stemmed from its poor financial position, which he attributed to a lack of good financial managers. His close friend, Sima Guang, also an Imperial Academy scholar, disagreed. He argued that Wang's analysis would simply give the government an excuse to raise taxes on ordinary people. But Wang argued that good financial management would help increase national revenues without increasing taxes. Wang Anshe defined his objective as to build up wealth by utilizing all possible resources and then to feed back into those resources with the accrued wealth. In principle, he expected good financial management to improve the sluggish economy. His aim was to regulate the joint responsibilities of the government, landlords, and peasants. He particularly wanted to encourage development by curbing the monopoly power of the major official landowners. His plans to enrich the country by means of a new financial policy resonated with Emperor Shensung. Having heard Wang Anshe's carefully considered plan, the ambitious young emperor was won over. He was convinced that in Wang Anshe he had found the most suitable advisor for his reign. In 1069, Shensung appointed Wang Anshe as Privy Councillor of the court to preside over the coming reforms. Wang then began to implement his reforms, the new policies. First of all, he focused on promoting agricultural production. He believed that increased agricultural production would be a lucrative source of taxes. As a local official in Yin County, Wang Anshe had already experimented with his new policies. He had noticed that for the peasants, spring was the most difficult time of the year. By the spring, the peasants had used up nearly all their grain from the previous autumn, but the summer grain was not yet ripe. With poor peasants caught between the two seasons, rich households took the opportunity to lend them money at high interest. Wang Anshe had responded by lending the poor peasants government grain. After the autumn harvest, they returned an equivalent amount of grain and paid a moderate amount of interest. This solved the problem of peasants going hungry for lack of grain, while the government granary was replenished with new grain every year. The success of this small-scale experiment gave Wang great confidence. Expanding this policy from the local area to the whole nation, he launched what was called the Green Sprouts Law. After the new law came in, private lenders were replaced by the government, which loaned grain to peasants at 20% annual interest. As a result, the peasants were relieved from the earlier high-interest loans. The Green Sprouts Law was the most representative example of Wang Anshi's new policies. But it was fiercely opposed by his colleague and close friend, Sima Guang. After the new law was enacted, Sima Guang wrote 3 times to Wang Anshi. He warned his friend that the new law was a form of extortion and would lead the government into tyranny. He urged him not to focus solely on money. But Wang Anshi dismissed Sima Guang's well-intentioned warnings, openly accusing him of using his letters to solicit fame.
是吧？在担任地方官的时候，由于他这个地域小，行政层次比较单一，所以说他对于信息的了解和处理的比较充分，也比较全面，符合实际。那么再加上这个监督和管理的成本比较低，就使得这个农业贷款系统啊就能够正常的运行，而且在小范围内这个获得了极大的成功。 那么再加上有没有上级的这种考核的压力，王安石本人也是很清廉，也不会去贪污受贿，所以说呢，在他这个小范围内实行青苗法，这个非常成功的。
但青苗法在全国推行的过程当中，它也是要经过官府的，它一经过官府就麻烦了，里边肯定会有人占这个政策的控制，因为这里边是有利益的。
Seeking to be rewarded for raising money, many local officials not only arbitrarily raised the interest rates, but also made the voluntary loans mandatory. Local governments became official loan sharks, with the central government as the biggest creditor. Many poor peasants were driven deeply into debt, while even the better off were burdened with high interest. Since the wealthier households still had to guarantee the loans to the poor, they were held responsible if the poor could not repay their loans. They were sometimes forced to sell their houses. Every level of society was worse off, causing anguish throughout the nation.
一些人想地主这个高利贷还不起，它的结果往往会造成很多的悲剧，很多的惨剧。如果官府给你贷了款， 你还不起，官府也饶不了你。那么老百姓惹不起官府啊，那么怎么办呢？他必须又要去向兼并之家，向地主又借高利贷，而且他利息比官府还要高。那么这样一来啊，农民实际上就承受了双重的剥削。
Although the new law was intended to lighten the financial burden on peasants, it achieved the exact opposite. The peasants' lives became harder, while corrupt officials reaped the profits. The new law quickly lost credibility, and people began to complain about it. Sima Guang resigned, vowing not to return until Wang Anshi's new policies were abolished. As he said, how can ice and charcoal coexist on the same stove? At the same time, Wang's new policies did rapidly increase the flow of wealth to the court. In 1077, Emperor Shensung changed his era name to Genesis of Abundance, in recognition of the brimming national coffers. Wang Anshi designed both the Green Sprouts Law and the later Hydraulics Works Law to improve the court's finances by promoting agricultural development. In order to ease social conflict and raise more tax, Wang also implemented a policy aimed at curbing the power of despotic landlords. In 1071, a long-considered law was introduced, the conscription exemption law. It allowed ordinary householders to pay for an exemption to being conscripted into the army. At the same time, the government adopted a system of hiring mercenaries. This meant that men could pay to get out of what had been obligatory military service. The law offered two benefits. It relieved the burden on the many men who were reluctant to face conscription, while at the same time filling the national coffers. A great deal of care was taken with this law. It took about 3 years to go from the initial drafting and discussions to its full implementation. But this law too was strongly opposed by Sima Guang and by others. Sima Guang believed the law was unfeasible because it was unfair to impose a uniform policy on all households, regardless of their individual circumstances. It meant that a rich man could pay just a small portion of his wealth to be exempted, while to pay the same amount, a poor man might be forced to sell members of his family. And while many poor households were struggling to pay, the government and its officials were accumulating wealth both for the national treasury and for their own pockets. Shensung was presented with a memorial listing 10 shortcomings of the conscription exemption law. Wang Anshi, the leader and originator of the reforms, was targeted by his rivals. At court, a campaign was brewing against him. But he was determined to see his new policies through to the end, no matter how difficult it proved to be. While Wang Anshi was pushing his reforms, Sima Guang endeavored to persuade the emperor to reconsider.
那时候，司马光在干什么呢？他在编写《资治通鉴》。《资治通鉴》顾名思义，是个皇帝提供历史的参考、借鉴。有一次，司马光就跟宋神宗列了萧规曹随这一段。
萧何是刘邦开国的宰相，他定了很多规章制度。后来他指定了一个接班人，就是曹参。这曹参接了班之后一个规矩都没有变，完全是按照萧何的办法来，以至于后来汉魏帝这个年间国泰民安。
For 70 years from its founding, the Han Dynasty practiced a policy of Taoist non-action. This was one of the main reasons why the dynasty reached its peak during the reigns of Emperors Wen and Qing. Sima Guang pointed to the Han precedent of Xiao He and Cao Can, which suggested that rules passed down from the ancestors should never be changed. He stressed that the government should not exploit the people. The emperor remained unconvinced. He despised the conservatives, believing they opposed the reforms because they themselves were politically stagnant. Shensung retained his confidence in Wang Anshi's reforms. Later generations saw their relationship as an ideal model of cooperation between a monarch and his minister. Yet the emperor proved unable to withstand the wave of attacks from Wang's rivals. Just as the reforms were reaching a critical point, a 10-month-long drought broke out across large parts of the empire, plunging many into poverty. And now Emperor Shensung was presented with a picture that shocked him. It was a painting by an official named Zheng Xia, who had witnessed the suffering caused by 9 months of devastating sandstorms. But people were also burdened with crippling taxes and fees under either the Green Sprouts Law or the conscription exemption law. So distressed was Zheng Xia that he presented a memorial to the emperor along with his painting. The painting reduced Emperor Shensung to tears. He was forlorn and perplexed. He could not understand why his reforms, intended to benefit both the country and its people, had failed. Zheng Xia told him, "People from every corner of the country are suffering. Their resentment is boiling over like waves on the sea." How did it end in such a dire situation? Shensung could not work out where the reforms had gone wrong. The painting so moved some scholar officials that they pleaded with the emperor to abolish the new policies and dismiss Wang Anshi from office. Confronted with the natural disaster and the objections of Wang's political opponents, Emperor Shensung began to falter. A poem mocking Wang Anshi read, "The new policies benefit no peasant. Instead, the whole world grumbles at their creator." The policies meant to enrich the country and its people had instead brought disaster. Under the circumstances, Emperor Shensung had to take the opposition's stand seriously. To maintain the power balance at court, he needed to make a sacrifice. In 1074, Emperor Shensung removed Wang Anshi from his position as privy councillor. Of crop fields. The Green Sprouts Law. From today's perspective, Wang Anshi's economic policies were in line with modern economic theory. He knew how to stimulate economic growth through a system of credit, and even tried to implement a framework to support it. Wang Anshi's reforms were forward-looking, but went far beyond what the society of his time could accept, and lacked the technical means required to support them. Some flaws might have been in the policies themselves, or in their implementation, or owing to incompetent officials. But regardless of the mounting criticism and pressure, Wang Anshi remained resolute. No one could sway him from implementing his reforms. He vowed to dismiss anyone who acted against them. Many officials were transferred or repressed for their opposition. But the reforms had in fact affected the interests of the whole of Chinese society. Although Emperor Shenzong reappointed Wang Anshe as his chancellor, he was no longer his old self and appeared unable to continue in office. The reforms staggered on, with the conservative and reformist factions continuing to oppose each other. Eventually, even the reformers began a power struggle among themselves. By that stage, Wang Anshe's reforms were doomed. Both Wang Anshe and Sima Guang were outstanding figures when judged by the moral standards of their day. Though a talented scholar, Wang Anshe lived a frugal life. He was the only chancellor in Chinese history who did not use a sedan chair or take a concubine. When he died, he left no inheritance. While he may have repressed opponents of his new policies, he never persecuted anyone with false charges. The most he did was demote them. When his critic, the poet Su Dongpo, was facing a death sentence, Wang Anshe defended him, telling the emperor, "A wise son of heaven should not kill a person of talent." Su Dongpo was exiled instead. Sima Guang was also a generous and decent statesman. While he vehemently opposed Wang Anshe's new policies, he acknowledged that many points in Wang's essays were brilliant. When Wang Anshe died, Sima Guang suggested that Wang's family should be given an allowance. As he put it, apart from being headstrong, Wang Anshe was not a bad person. After Wang Anshe's death, the conservatives made a comeback. But even opponents like Su Dongpo praised him, saying, "Wang Anshe was well versed in the 6 noble arts. He brought innovation to the theories of 100 classical schools." The knowledge he obtained in his life won him respect and fame. With his intelligence, he could realize his ambitions. With his eloquence, he could articulate his ideas. The elegant poems and essays he wrote were like beautiful ornaments. The noble deeds he performed could move the world. This gracious treatment of a rival demonstrates that these were morally refined men in a civilized political environment. Power struggles between eunuchs and nobles under the Eastern Han dynasty and factional struggles in the later Tang had ended in bloodshed. It seems only the Sung dynasty was able to work things out peacefully. Nevertheless, high moral character did not always lead to correct action. As both the conservatives and the reformers continued to insist on their own political ideals, it was inevitable that they would fall into the trap of fighting for the sake of it. In the heat of battle, no one displayed political tolerance or willingness to compromise. The lessons of history are complex, and our understanding varies according to the times. Today, when we look back 900 years, what lessons do we learn from Wang Anshe and the reforms he implemented?